CNN's Caitlin Collins reported today that several Republicans alleged to have been involved in the rally that preceded the deadly riot have sought clemency from Trump. But after meeting with his legal advisors for hours on Saturday, the president isn't expected to pardon them. So, you have these lawmakers who went along with this sham, some of whom I think did so for their own political purposes. People like Senator Josh Hawley, who's trying to appeal to Trump's base, certainly. But it's just hilarious to me that they went along with Trump. They licked his boots as much as they possibly could. And then when Trump has an opportunity to, I guess, preemptively pardon them, he refuses to do so. And before I get your thoughts on that, Ryan, I do also want to go to a speech that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell gave today in regard to naming names and placing blame on individuals who he believes provoked the violent riots that took place about 2 weeks ago. Let's watch.
The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. And they tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like. But we pressed on. We stood together and said an angry mob would not get veto power over the rule of law in our nation, not even for one night. We certified the people's choice for their 46th president. Tomorrow, President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris will be sworn in.
Now, I would have liked some of that strong language condemning Donald Trump's behavior prior to, the last day of his term. But what Mitch McConnell did there was name Trump by name, which I think is important. Mm-hmm. But when he says by other powerful people, I mean, we all know who he's talking about. He's talking about Republican lawmakers who engaged in this and enabled Donald Trump in provoking this violent mob. But Trump's not planning on pardoning them. The question is, will Democrats actually push forward in trying to hold these Republican lawmakers accountable?
And what's so interesting about that McConnell speech is that it seems like he has finally decided that he has Trump and maybe the Trump movement at a place where it's weak enough that if he strikes at it now, that and do it serious and irreparable harm. Because McConnell has been in an interesting place where he considers his number one enemies to be Democrats, and so if he'll align with whatever movement exists that will empower him to go for what he wants, which is basically tax cuts for the rich and expanding his own power and expanding Republican power. But as he was helping to empower that wing, that Trumpist wing of the Republican Party, he knew very well that he was taking a gamble. That it's the same gamble that people have made all over the world. Saudi Arabia made it 15, 20 years ago, when they said, well, we're having a problem with these kind of extremists within our border. Let's kind of fund them outside of Saudi Arabia, and that should kind of solve the problem. But and John Boehner did the same thing with the Tea Party. Like, he saw the energy of the Tea Party. He said, well, let's stoke this. Let's see if we can harness this and see where it goes. And it's like whenever you do that, it's like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It gets out of hand, and so it started to get out of hand for McConnell. But now maybe he's looking at this and thinking, this is my chance to actually, to get this animal back in the lab and to kill it once and for all. And so if he thinks that he can disqualify Trump from running in the future, and if he can teach a lesson to the Republicans who went along with him, then it might be in his political interest to do so. The question, though, facing him is, does he have the courage to do that? Because if he goes for it and fails, then he knows that he's going to suffer blowback like you've never seen before.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. But at the same time, there seems to be, when I compare someone like Mitch McConnell to Lindsey Graham, there seems to be this fearlessness with Mitch McConnell. And I'm not saying that because I admire him in any way. Please don't misunderstand. But I mention it because, he stands there, gives this speech, names Donald Trump by name, and he's unwavering when he has critique for Trump. He doesn't get intimidated by Trump's base the same way you see someone like Senator Lindsey Graham get intimidated. And I mean, maybe for good reason. We saw that video of Lindsey Graham being hounded and intimidated by Trump supporters in person while he was at an airport. So I mean, I'm sure that was a terrifying experience for him, but Mitch McConnell has done a better job in kind of striking this balance in criticizing Trump when things get pretty intense and extreme, while avoiding some of the ire coming from Trump supporters. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's right. And partly I think that goes back to in 2014, McConnell got a very kind of Trump, proto-Trump like opponent in the primary, and he crushed the guy. And so that, and Bevin, who then became governor, was absolutely terrible governor, and was beaten by the Democrat Bashir, who's in office now. But I think his ability to take on that kind of Tea Party wing, that proto-Trump wing of the party in his own state, and crush them and survive, gave him a little bit of confidence. Now, throughout the Trump's presidency, he sat back and just said, do what you need to do and just keep sending me judges. He was completely comfortable with making that compromise, but he also kept Trump at arm's length. When there was that super spreader event, which was the announcement of Amy Coney Barrett's nomination for the Supreme Court, that was almost like a perfect metaphor for his relationship to Trump. He didn't show up for that event because he knows that he's somebody who actually wears masks and takes COVID seriously, and knows that Trump doesn't, but he doesn't say much about that publicly. All he wanted from Trump was Amy Coney Barrett. Like that's what he wanted. He doesn't need to actually be there and be around Trump. And so that kind of typifies what his relationship was. And now that he has a chance that he might be able to finish off Trump, it will be interesting to see if he actually takes it, because he has that opportunity. If he votes to convict, and there are constitutional scholars who think you need to take 2 votes because there's kind of a comma in the Constitution, a comma and disqualify. So people say you need to take a second vote if you want to disqualify him. If he votes for that and impeachment, conviction on impeachment, then he's really finishing him off, because without social media and without the ability to run, he doesn't have the oxygen for a comeback.
Yeah. And honestly, with the social media ban alone, I feel like Trump-related provocations and news has really died down a little bit. And I mean, I particularly enjoy that. But one more point I wanted to quickly make about, this possibility of holding Republican lawmakers accountable for enabling Donald Trump's lies about the election. You heard some strong language coming from Mitch McConnell. However, there is a Democrat in the Senate who does not want to pursue any type of investigation into these Republican lawmakers. Eric Wasson tweets that Senator Feinstein doesn't appear on board with punishing Senator Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley for role in challenging Electoral College. And then he shares a quote by Senator Feinstein. I think the Senate is a place of freedom and people come here to speak their piece. I would really like her to resign. I think it's time. I think it's time to go. Right. This is not a helpful situation, having her serve as a senator right now.
And it puts all of us in really uncomfortable situations when we have to even talk about this, because there has been reporting that has come out of her office from her close staffers that she has, and we all know people who have gone through dementia and have aged, who have good days and they have bad days, and on her bad days they say that she'll get frustrated because she's not following along with a briefing. She'll ask for a briefing that she just had an hour before. She doesn't have, she's not with it in the way that she was for her entire career as a politician. And constitutionally she's entitled to continue to serve out her term, but it makes conversations like these so difficult, because we have to ask ourselves, does she know what Hawley and Cruz did? And if somebody said to her that they're suggesting expelling a member of the Senate for something that they said on the Senate floor, well, then of course she would say, no, I oppose that. I think this is that we come here to speak our piece, and we disagree, and that's how the Senate is. But does she know actually what she's saying? But we can't even say that she knows.
I know, and you make such a great point about the difficulty in speaking candidly about the real issue, surrounding Senator Feinstein, her mental health. You don't want to come across as, mocking her, insulting her in any way, but her fitness matters, and her ability to really decipher what's going on with these Republican lawmakers matters, especially in this case where you do have lawmakers provoking violent mobs throughout the country, not just what we experienced in the Capitol, but leading up to it, there were foiled right-wing terror plots in this country. There needs to be some accountability, and it's really, really depressing to see that kind of comment coming from a lawmaker who is very uncomfortable to critique, but I think the critiques are valid, and we're always gonna be honest with you guys, regardless of how uncomfortable it might be to talk about these issues.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.